Welcome to the Medical Manners Podcast, where I give healthcare providers simple tips for ways they can transform the way they connect with their patients and colleagues. Connecting with patients isn't some secret sauce that some of us have and others don't. They're just skills, implemented consistently over time. If you want to transform your medical practice, you're in the right place. I'm Katie Wyatt, your host. This episode is sponsored by the Connect Better audio course. This course is for healthcare providers who want to drastically improve their patient satisfaction or Press Ganey scores. Each week for 6 weeks, you will listen to a 5 to 10 minute audio training. Then throughout the week, your job is to implement the skills you're taught in every patient encounter. You'll be amazed at how much your score can improve in such a short amount of time. Go to medicalmanners.com and use the code PODCAST for 10% off the course. I have Sharla Sintyl on the podcast with me today. And Sharla, I'm so excited to chat with you a little bit. Tell us what happened to Tevin. Introduce us to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I am just so grateful for medical professionals in general. I've never been in the medical profession, but I can just imagine how tricky it can be in all kinds of different situations. So Tevin was 6 this last February, and we had just gotten back from camping in our little trailer, and that day we got home, he just felt like he wanted to go start his own campfire because we had been doing it the night before.
Gotcha.
And so he got out the lighter. He was looking for something in his dad's drawer, and he found the lighter, and I think that's kind of what sparked I'm going to go light my own fire. Yeah. So he went outside, and then he searched around, and he found the big gallon of gas. And we didn't use gas on the fire at the campfire, but somehow he knew that gas would spark a great fire. So he dragged the gas all the way across the lawn, closer to kind of the house and where our trailer is. And he got a little piece of paper and a little stick. He poured some gas on it. And in the process of dragging the gas and getting it on a stick and stuff, he got some on his shoe and his pants. So when he lit that lighter, everything just went up, and whatever had gas in sight just went up as well. And that was his right foot and his right shoe especially. So he said it was a pretty big poof, when he did light that lighter. So it immediately got his foot in his pants. And it was probably only for about 30 seconds where he was just trying so hard to stamp it out and do something. He was patting it for a while. But for some reason, he just never thought of I should take these off, He just kept trying to put it out that way. But really what it was doing is because his shoe and his pants had gas on them, they were just burning his skin really bad and melting to his skin. And so luckily I was on the back porch. So I was outside and I heard him start screaming. And when I heard it start to get worse, I ran and I saw that he was on fire. And so I literally just ripped off his pants and his shoe. That's the first thing I did. But even by the time I did that, he had skin that was pretty much melted off. So we jumped in the car and rushed to the emergency room. I should have called the ambulance. I keep looking back on that. But for some reason in my head, it was the hospital's 30 minutes away. I'm going to get there just as soon as the ambulance is, or the ambulance is going to take even longer, But because I didn't even think through how the ambulance could put him out of pain, on the way there and stuff like that. So
yeah.
But anyway, we got there and it was an excruciating 30 minutes, but my neighbor was able to come and take the other kids, and we rushed to the hospital, and he just screamed for 30 minutes. The only thing I was able to do was get him a wet towel, to kind of help him out. It was pretty excruciating for him for the whole 30 minutes. And I had called my husband. He met us there because he was doing some work meetings. And so he had him all checked in and stuff. So they were able to get him back and get him out of pain and stuff. But what ended up happening is they put us in another ambulance and sent us directly to a burn center, which was about 2 hours away. And yeah, we spent a whole week there getting a bunch of surgeries. The first surgery, they kind of just like basically scraped all the dead matter off, that had been burnt. And then the next surgeries were skin grafts and all kinds of stuff.
They took skin from him to do the skin
Yeah,
grafts.
they took skin from his upper thigh.
Okay.
So this was all on his right leg and foot. They took skin from his right leg, his upper thigh, because his upper thigh wasn't touched. But luckily there were no other parts that were damaged. I mean, I didn't get burnt. He had like maybe one blister on his hand. His toes like were fine. Even the bottom of his shoe, the foot was fine. So like walking and stuff like that wasn't a problem. He didn't have any burnt like fingers or toes, which can get tricky. So
Yeah.
it just kind of started this whole process of wound care, which I had never been familiar with, but it is a long process
Well, and tell
because
me real quick, how much of his leg was burned? Like, how high do those burn marks come up his calf? Was it to his knee?
it was almost to his knee. Yeah.
Okay.
So it
Oh,
didn't come past his knee. So really like in the world of burns, it really wasn't like super, super bad. But it is for him, it will be like a lifelong thing because because the scars are so intense, I guess, both in his thigh where he got his skin graft and then also down below. He will maybe have to have surgeries later where they're like releasing scars so that as he grows and stuff like that, because he
yeah.
has so much more to grow. We are still going. I mean, we're 9 months out now, and we're still going monthly for laser treatments, and that's surgery every time because he's so young, they put him out for every single one. So his scars have been healing pretty puffy, and so it just takes a lot more like laser surgeries for them to try to get those scars to be not so rigid and puffy and to have the color be better and all that kind of stuff. So
Gotcha.
yeah, that's where we're at.
And how is his pain now? Is he pretty pain free at this point?
Yes, I would say almost pain free. She does have a lot of times where like certain parts of the burn will itch or burn or sting a little bit. And then after his laser treatments, he does have a couple days of pretty minor pain as it's healing and stuff like that. It doesn't affect like the way he walks or anything like that, which we're so lucky. We're so lucky. So
You remember Katie Layton, a mutual friend of ours,
mhm.
right? When we were graduating nursing school, before we were going to take our NCLEX, we went up to her parents' cabin in Bear Lake. And it was just she and I, we were, I don't know, 20-year-old girls. And we stayed at the cabin and we studied all weekend. And we were snowed in. We'd go like get wood and keep this wood burning stove going. And we just studied and studied. Well, one night I set my hand on the top of that wood burning stove and just burnt just my palm and a couple of fingertips. And we ended up leaving a day early because I was in such excruciating pain. I couldn't get on top of the pain. I couldn't sleep. And that was just my hand. And so I can't imagine the pain that Tevin was in and the fact that he was 6. And that's a little bit harder to process that, right? So how did pain management go and how did they kind of approach that when you were in the hospital with him?
He did have an IV. The only time that he was getting like IV pain meds was obviously when he was in the ambulance, right? And when they were taking him to the burn clinic, but also when they did the surgeries, they would use the IV to do pain meds. A lot of times after surgery, they would give him fentanyl. Besides that, he was taking kid ibuprofen. That was pretty much all he was getting besides that. I was kind of surprised at how well he did with just that, but
Yeah.
that's what they did. So
As you think back on that experience, is there anything that a healthcare provider or really anyone in the healthcare system that you dealt with, is there anything that they said to you or to Tevin that was specifically helpful or meaningful?
I look back and I think of a few instances where I feel like the healthcare providers really got where we were at We had just gone through like a really traumatic experience. And not only was I trying to navigate it from my perspective, but I was also trying to navigate his feelings at the same time, which were a lot more than I thought they would be. His roller coaster of feelings throughout this process was pretty crazy. And then I was trying to do the same for my own, right? With my own mom guilt and all that stuff. I feel like there was only a few times where I saw that the person on the other end of this really understood, whoa, this mom is going through a lot right now, you know? Or for Tevin, he is going through a lot right now with what he's having to go through as a 6-year-old, you know? And sometimes it was only with a few words and like a look of like, I see you, I'm looking in your eye, we're connecting right now, right? So one of them was when it was in the triage in the emergency room of the first hospital we went to. There was a woman, and I don't even know what her position was, but she wasn't even the one that was touching him. She might have been a social worker, I don't know. But she literally was there just to like make us comfortable. And she did ask a few questions just to make sure I didn't burn my child, right? She asked him a few questions to make sure that everything was good there. But she was so helpful in my situation to just calm me at that moment. And she just kept coming up to me and touching me and saying, "You got this, mom. Like, you're doing awesome." And kind of just helping me out in that way because I was going through so many emotions at that moment. I had so many questions like, I have other kids at home. How long am I going to be there? Is this going to include like so many surgeries? And she said, she just kind of like gave me the rundown of, I do know some people and that this is kind of what it entails, but they'll tell you when you get there. And so, like, she was just able to take my really high emotions and my so many questions, make me feel calm. And she also did the same with Tevin. She talked him through it. She, gave him little teddy bears and stuff to make him feel better. And she was one of them that will always stick out to me. I always found that the younger generation were more understanding and also patient with my child. Sometimes when I got older nurses and stuff, they tend to just be really snappy with him when he was maybe not reacting the way that he should. Or like if I had a lot of demands as far as like a mother and I was pressing the button a lot or whatever, you can tell when a nurse is like, okay, you're a little much. But I had a 6-year-old in the hospital for so many days, and there was just so many things that he wasn't getting to do that he did at home, and he was so restless and so this and that. So I had a lot of questions, and I was just trying my hardest to make him feel comfortable. And then a couple times I had the same nurse when he was in post-op, when he was coming out of surgeries, and she would bring him back after he woke up, and she would just tell me how amazing my child is. He is so smart. He is so amazing. How cute he is. And she would go on and on and on. And it was just so sweet. Like she didn't have to do that. How many kids does she see, But she didn't have to do that. And with us already navigating, his decision to start a fire and stuff like that, he needed to hear that because he was already feeling down on himself for making this decision that impacted so much of his life. And I was already feeling down as a parent, And so just her saying those words that him and I could hear made a big difference in our day.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she thought it was nothing, but for us, it meant a lot. And I'll always remember her, when I see her in pre op or just in the halls or whatever, I always think, oh, what an amazing person she is. And she was just such a kind heart.
Wow. I love that. And what I heard from that, so the first lady, we don't know exactly who she was, maybe social worker. It sounds like she really put herself in your shoes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she kind of like saw things from your perspective and answered questions accordingly and dealt with emotions as if she were in your shoes. And I love that idea. And I think that's important for us to remember. And then the second group where you're talking about kind of the younger generation of healthcare providers that seem to be a little bit more patient. I do think that after you've worked in healthcare for a while and you've seen 300 kids who have been burned,
Yeah.
you kind of just go on autopilot. And I think it's so important to remember that even though this is the 300th kid you've seen that's been burned, this is Tevin's first burn. And
Yeah.
this is your first burn. And kind of, again, I guess that's just putting ourselves in our patient's shoes, but realizing that even though they've probably been asked the same question that you were asking them 300 times, that you have never had that question answered. And so I think that's an important perspective shift to do. And then it's interesting you talk about how the third lady, the pre-op nurse, was so good about building Tevin up. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot with youth in general. You know, I have children and I think they hear a lot what they need to do different. And, you know, we'll get emails from teachers about things that were done in class that need to be improved on or whatever. They hear that and that's fine. And I actually appreciate when teachers email me that and I am willing to talk to my children. You know, I'm all in on that. But I think that we maybe all could do a little bit of a better job of sending the email when our child does something great or, you know, giving that praise when we see it, because I think they do need to hear it. They've got to hear, right? Like, Tevin is probably already like, okay, I should not have drugged the gas thing and had a lighter. He knows that now. He knew that immediately. He needed to hear some good things too. And so I love that she focused on that.
Yeah, and I feel like the only advice that I would have, because overall the medical providers at this facility were so great because it was a burn clinic and we were even in a pediatric burn clinic. So they even had like a separate pediatric burn clinic. So it
They
was
knew.
that they were used to working with not only burn survivors, but also burn survivors who were kids, you know, which is a totally different game because some of these kids that they had in there couldn't even communicate of where they were hurting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were at an awesome facility and we were lucky that it was only like an hour and 15 minutes away from our house, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and this amazing burn clinic. So I think overall we really received some amazing care. But I think the thing that I kept seeing was the human connection of realizing that these people that I'm working with right now have just been through a really traumatic event that is going to change their whole lives. This was like an event that we will always look back on, and that both him and I have learned so many lessons just about, you know, and but that we were both going through so many emotions that we just needed like so much grace at that moment. Like we just needed them to realize that, and them to realize that both the mom and the child right now are having a really hard time navigating their own emotions. And the mom is also trying to navigate his emotions, trying to keep him happy in this crappy situation that he's in right now, you know?
Yeah.
Because I found that if they were able to kind of remember that, then it really changed the way that they cared for us. There was one situation where one of the nurses, he kind of he was having a really hard day and he asked her or kind of demanded some things in not a very nice way.
Mm-hmm.
And she got kind of upset. That's not the way you treat me, and kind of became the mother in that point. I look back on that situation and I just thought that it could have been handled differently because I was there, I saw everything, and so I was able to take care of the situation after she left and make sure that he apologized and that things, you know, were fine. But I could tell that she had been having a hard day too, you know, that she just brought it in with her. You know, I could tell from the moment she stepped in the door that just was not happy, you know?
Mm,
So just her like demand for respect in that moment when he didn't have the capability to offer her that respect was kind of hard and just added a little bit more to our day.
right.
It's hard though because as medical professionals, you guys have your own lives, right? You have everything that's going on in your life, and then you're stepping into other people's lives who have so much going on. And so I don't even know how you guys do it. It's amazing.
Well, and I think the hard thing is that we all have bad days. And sometimes, depending on what's going on in our personal life, that is hard to leave behind.
Yeah.
And if that's something that happens a couple times a year, I'd say that's normal and natural. But I think that sometimes we get ourselves in situations in life where we are living such chaotic lives that we can't care for patients the way we should because we're not able to leave our personal life alone. And I think that's maybe a little different, and that maybe we need to look at our lives. And some things you can't change, some things we have no control over, but are there things that we have control over? And if we do, we've got to get our personal lives in order so that we can come to work and we can practice the healer's art and we can be caring. I think that's important. I know, like, before I work a shift, if the day before I get my laundry done and I get groceries and I get my stuff done, then I am able to be really good and present when I'm working. And there's days that I don't do that and I struggle. And that's not, I have total control over that. I can make a good choice there and I have
Yeah.
power over that. And so I think the things we can control as healthcare providers, we need to try to do that so that we can show up and not drag in baggage with us, because we're dealing with, that's our job, is to deal with people who are going through big baggage stuff. And we've got to be able to help lift their baggage and not be carrying our baggage around if possible. So I love that idea, Sharla.
Yeah.
Well, is there any other advice that you have for us? Anything else that comes to mind or that we haven't touched on yet?
I don't think so. Oh man, I'm just so grateful. I know that it's like a thankless job in so many ways. And so I know you have so many healthcare workers that follow you and listen to your podcast. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for making this a daily thing that you have to, that you do have to see so many hard things happening and so many people in really hard situations in their life, but you come in and you do it, you put your lives aside and you put your feelings aside and you just do the best. It's like the most incredible form of customer service. Like that
Oh,
you're
thank
able
you.
to help us and help us heal in the most amazing ways, because healthcare providers are there when, they're the first line of people who are always there and always need to be there, because we will always need them and we will always look to you guys for healing and for knowledge and for peace in the most hard times of our lives. So I'm just really grateful for the healthcare workers who provide that and who really practice that.
Oh, thanks, Charlotte. There's so many good providers out there. I totally agree with that. Do you want to give any shout outs? I really love to tag organizations or providers who did an amazing job. I guess just how I feel like we need to give kids kudos. I think healthcare providers hear a lot of surveys and bad patient comments when things don't go well. And I don't know if they get a pat on the back for all the thankless things they do. So is there anyone you want to give like a special shout out to, or that I can reach out to and give kudos?
For sure, give a shout out to the burn unit. It's at the Doctors Hospital of Augusta, and it's the Joseph Still Burn and Wound Clinic. They are just so phenomenal at treating these burn victims and just, doing their best to help them in their lives. I mean, I can't even tell you how many different forms of care we got through medical care, but also like they were just showering him with gifts like constantly, just to make his day brighter. And they had so many closets full of games and toys and for this pediatric
Wow.
unit. And so we just had such a good experience. And still to this day, through connections we made through the burn clinic, we're able to go to all kinds of burn foundations who hold family camps and interact with other burn survivors. Because of
Wow.
the connections that we made at that burn clinic, it really has changed our lives.
Charlotte, thanks so much for taking time to visit with us. I'm so glad that Tevin is healing, and it sounds like he's in a good place, although I know he's probably got more coming down the pipeline for him as he grows, but I'm so glad that he's okay. that could have gone a lot worse than it did. And it sounds like things are doing okay for him. So I'm grateful for that.
Yes, we feel so blessed. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, the best way to support what I do is by rating and reviewing the podcast. Your feedback helps me reach more listeners to make an even greater impact. It would also mean the world to me if you would share it with a friend or colleague who you think could benefit from the topics we discuss. Together, we can transform the way we deliver healthcare by transforming the way we connect. Take care.